I feel like we might talk about this for a few minutes, even though this is basically like the only thing that the other side is talking about on their podcast this week. It would appear. I went on a podcast over the weekend that at least some people would consider an op podcast, a podcast that at one time it was unthinkable of the 22ster going on. But I would like to send a shout out to the Apollo because the 22ster went through there, hopped on the podcast, sat down with the Bloods and whatnot, and had a pretty good time. And a lot of people are losing their fucking goddamn minds from what I hear about this exchange.
Well, the one of the craziest things to me about it is just the
Wait, you
visual.
went there today? You went there to their platform and sit down?
On Saturday, yeah, there's a dude named
Mackwop.
Mackwop.
Adjacent. This is like they're under the Fig Community umbrella.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's kinda like
on the
AD
same
and
set, like the same. They literally filmed. That's what was like crazy to me is seeing you on. It looks so similar.
It's not the same set that they do. It's downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looked very similar.
It's some
like,
TDE affiliates. They're involved with TDE, and they do a podcast. It's dope. They
you
got
went there and it
motion.
was straight.
And so I just randomly ended up DMing Mackwop, who's the leader of this podcast, and I said, "You should come on No Jumper." I've been wanting to do content with him for a while. I thought it would be a good opportunity to just throw it out there. He said, "I'll do it if you come on our shit first." I said, "Boom, I'm there." That's a good way. If you want me to do some content with you, challenge me as if I would be a bitch if I didn't do it, and that's gonna really make me want to do it. That's a reverse psychology.
You felt like
thing.
that was a challenge when he said that. Like you would never agree to that. Like that would be beyond you.
A little bit. Like he probably thought like, oh, Adam might be like too big-headed or too full of his own shit to like necessarily go on a smaller podcast. But I'm not. You know, I'm down for the challenge. So I pulled up. Might have pulled up with a couple of PPBs, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, had to holler at Wax, say, hey, let me get a couple guys.
Okay.
Got to run through there. I was thinking about bringing Conrad. I thought he might fall asleep. Didn't want to take the risk.
You should have just went with the homies. We don't mix security, man.
But I didn't want.
Just play.
Okay, but I can't go with you or you because then it's like too obvious that y'all need to get on camera.
Yeah.
And it's also like. I didn't want to go with like anybody else that was going to be like on mic because I wanted to like make it clear I'm cool with doing this.
But you said you had a good time though.
I had a good time. It was good.
That's all that matters.
But one of the guys, Keem, TDE Keem, he was on the podcast with me. We're on there for about 20 minutes. I start noticing he's looking at his phone a lot. He's like texting while we're talking. He's doing vigorous texting. He goes out in the hallway. I heard from my boys that he heard him in a somewhat intense exchange on the phone.
With T-Rail in there.
You might assume, but who knows? And then he did not come back.
Oh,
rolling?
He didn't come back. He dipped out. Now, this is the thing. I do believe he lives in Orange County.
Yeah.
So it is not a quick journey on the highway to get there. Keep in mind, this is Saturday at like 6 p.m.
So you basically saying they don't want him on the broadcast, which you said they told him to get off.
I'm pretty sure that it was communicated to him over the phone.
You better get off that broadcast, right?
If you ever want to do a podcast with us, you got to get away from that white boy right now.
Was that before or after the big deal phone call?
He should have used that as his excuse because Keem don't want to be there no more, man.
You don't think?
You can see it. Keem is my light-skinned tall nigga, right?
Yes.
He left the show before. They got into it. He left. Remember, he left early.
Wait, but you think he wants to leave the Apollo?
No.
Or because he also does the other podcast with T-Rail and Pun.
He don't want to be there no more. It's not his cup of tea.
But okay, of all the guys on the channel, Mackwop doesn't do podcasts with any of the other guys consistently.
Yeah.
Tiny doesn't do podcasts with the other ones consistently.
I think
Keem is the
Mackwop
only
and them
one
is
that
over.
has a consistent podcast with T-Rail and Pun, and I'm pretty sure that's why he got the hell out of there as soon as he received this phone call.
Well, Mackwop was a regular over there too.
And they took his sign down, and the sign is now hanging at the Apollo.
And I believe Mackwop and there was somewhat of a heated exchange that I saw a clip of at some point. I believe with Heather and Mackwop, and I don't know if that is part
because that was the whole thing where she basically had COVID. One mic.
I told you. One thing he gonna do, we can't have no side conversations on camera.
You want the 22ster pack out is coming.
The 22ster pack out? I just hope y'all can survive me.
That is something I'm considering. But Anyway, I did it, and
No, the Heather.
it was a good experience from my perspective. Oh yeah, okay. You want to go back to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was something where Heather had COVID. She was putting everybody on the crew at risk. Again, Keem dipped out early on the podcast because he realized that she was potentially giving him COVID. And then
That's what you was talking about,
I think it was also partially because Mackwop had Illa, I think, on his shit, and Heather was beefing with him. Either way, there's all kinds of stipulations that the Meeks family puts on anybody in that orbit. And like from my perspective, Mackwop is somebody who, think about it, the big breakup happened basically like right as the Apollo was starting to gain motion.
Right.
So you have AD and T-Rail, and they get to benefit from being on No Jumper. And then meanwhile, Mackwop and them, he probably kind of knows that if they had been more involved in the whole plot line and everything, that he probably would have got an increase in fans and viewers. And then meanwhile, you fast forward a couple years, and it's like he's still not fucking with us or doing anything with us. And in his mind, it's like, am I really not doing content with No Jumper or not taking other opportunities as a result of just like being loyal to some people who he acts like he's super cool with them, but I think in his head, it's kind of like, y'all are not super cool with me. You're not necessarily like doing anything for me. We don't really have anything going on right now. So why am I turning down an opportunity like having Adam on the podcast?
I assume their relationship started because he was Schoolboy's DJ. So that's like how it started with him rocking with T-Rail and them, right?
Probably.
But the thing is, so after like Heather, I don't think she was like saying anything directly to Mackwop, but was kind of talking aggressively close to him. And then there's another clip. Now, forgive me if I'm making wrong connections here, but there was another clip where Mackwop was discussing his girl, and he was like, "Oh, my girl from the hood, she from over there by the grape streets, and she don't like any woman talking to me, even remotely disrespectfully. She's down to beat a bitch ass."
Oh,
So I don't know if there is a correlation between them having friction from there or what, but
and
I
also
did see that clip.
Heather, it has been rumored that she's running from some fades in the Hoover area, that there's some Hoover girls that want to fight her.
There's some Hooverettes.
They want to pack her out, and she's not going. She's not pulling up to the block, which, you know, that needs to be taken care of at some point in order to just return to normal life.
She could go on Kill Squad website, download some homegirls. You know what I'm saying? You pay the money, they get downloaded.
Where's she from?
You get the numbers.
Texas. No. But she'd be hanging out with T-Rail and like throwing up signs and shit. So at a certain point,
She to convert in a minute.
She was talking a bunch of crazy shit, and so Big Deal basically told her that she needed to pull up to the set and get packed out, and she didn't go.
Oh no, and that's also what I wanted to know. When Keem left the pod, was that before or after the Big Deal phone call?
I think the Big Deal phone call happened afterwards because I just randomly hit up Big Deal, and I was like, "Yo, I'm pulling up to the Apollo tonight." He just immediately called me. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna slide through." And he got there before me.
Oh, okay.
And so apparently they made it clear that they didn't want him to come through, which, to be fair, me and him both being on the podcast together, it would have looked like a T-Rail pack out more than it. Because realistically, I probably talked about T-Rail for like 5 minutes total.
But that's like the reverse version of what they did when they had all the former No Jumper employees on.
That's a good point. And I think that's another part of this that probably stands out to people like Mackwop is there's clearly some hypocrisy going on here and some rules that are being put in place of this can't be discussed, but then meanwhile everybody else is shit. Like they can't talk about whether Stet was originally fucking Heather before T-Rail got in a relationship with her, but then meanwhile everything from everybody else's lives is on the table to talk about. And I think that feels kind of hypocritical to some of these people at a certain point. Now that being said, I only talked about T-Rail for, in my opinion, maybe 5-10 minutes maximum.
Was that conversation awkward at that point, or how did it feel?
I don't give a fuck. Honestly, that shit old as fuck to me.
Heather and Black China was goers back in the day. It's like they're goers.
What the hell you know about Heather being a goer?
What do you mean?
What do you got info?
I don't got info. I just know who they used to be around. I'm not gonna be that messy guy, but the homies. You remember the homies had her all over Vernon? Come on, cuz. Stop doing that, cuz. Oh, Vernon. She been on Vernon, Black China. All that been on Vernon for a minute now.
Hey, look.
Hot Yellow?
Listen.
The only thing I can say is this.
I ain't gonna put all them people in the mix because they say I be just dragging people into my internet drama. So I ain't gonna say the people now.
I don't know, man.